For anyone still out there, this is the Dystopic Radio Network.
I can't really remember when I last had any hope.
Somewhere
I came into this game for the action, the excitement.
on the abandoned highways of tomorrow.
No one would have believed in the early years of the 21st century.
Keep your radio on. Listen for our broadcasts.
You're listening to the Dystopic Boys.
We get the best of both worlds. The fastest reflexes modern technology has to offer, onboard computer-assisted memory, and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. It is my great pleasure to present to you
Bloopers. We eliminate people from the future.
Do you wake from your finest fantasy only to return to your daily nightmare?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome to the Dystopic Radio Network. I'm one of your survivors here, Wendell, and I'm here with the other survivor for the day.
That's right. Niles is here, and I'm still living.
Why are you talking about yourself in the third person?
Because you were talking about me in the second person.
That's because I am the second person.
Exactly.
All right, anyway, welcome back, everybody. We switched up venues since last time. The Amazon warehouse that we were in last time got overrun by zombies, security.
Yeah,
what's
whoa, that jumped out.
What's our dystopian
I like how you call them
version
venues. As like we chose this place. We got run out, man.
Well, we got run out of the last one. We chose this one.
Attacked.
We chose this pizzeria for the satellite connection that was on the
I
roof.
was hoping there was going to be some pizza here, but
We wouldn't want the pizza at this point anyway. All right.
True.
We are here to talk about some movies and some books and some news and you name it.
Yeah, and before that, actually, Wendell, how was your week?
Oh, not bad. You know how kind of your average work week.
No, Wendell, I don't think the people out there know what your week is like.
I got up. I let's see, had breakfast. No, I usually just get up whenever my students schedule me, go to work. I'm a flight instructor, so kind of
There you have it. He's a
your
flight instructor.
average go to work, fly airplanes, try not to let students kill you, and come back home. That's pretty much what my week consists of.
Yeah, basically, Wendell and I have been forced into this moment of rush because I got forced in. Well, I didn't get forced in. I got called about a job, and I have to leave tomorrow morning. So here we are tonight.
What are you going to be working on?
Tuesday night. I'm actually going to be working on a film called...
Is it a film or a movie?
It is probably more of a film.
All right.
Probably more of the independent in nature. So, but it's called Deep Burial, and yeah, I'll be on that for a month. So you might not hear from us for a little while, but yeah, we'll be back.
All right.
Soon,
Well,
so.
now that we know how we both survived the week, what's up next?
I guess I can go to this. No, that's the wrong one.
We're still learning the bumpers.
There.
Oh, and that
Hey!
sound means that it's time for the "What are you drinking?" segment.
I can't read sideways.
All right. So tonight I am drinking the Elysian Dark of the Moon Pumpkin Stout, which is actually kind of interesting because your typical pumpkin beer is actually a lighter.
Is it?
Kind of it's not light, but it's more of like a kind of like an amber, like a kind of an amber ale that has some pumpkin flavors added to it, or pumpkin flavor or pumpkin added to it. So it's typically not a very dark beer, whereas this one, as you can see, and as people will be able to see on the pictures on the website when they go up, probably tomorrow, very, very dark. Like it looks like a Guinness, basically, for the listeners at home.
I would even call it darker than a Guinness because I feel like Guinness you can actually see through a little bit, sort of.
As you can sound, it tastes delicious.
Oh yeah, and I'm burping mine, which I was so excited.
Yeah, Niles, what are you drinking?
I was so excited to find this one. It's another Elysian.
Elysian Brewing.
product.
Elysian Brewing, by the way, for anyone before Niles gets into that. Elysian Brewing is a local brewery that somehow managed to survive and is actually putting out really good beer in the Pacific Northwest.
It's because it's in Seattle. Is it in Seattle or where's it at?
Yeah, it's in Seattle. I think their main tasting room, their main kind of showroom tasting room, is down in Seattle somewhere.
Yeah. somewhere.
I haven't been there. I've heard it's pretty cool.
See how much we know about.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I'm actually drinking the Maelstrom.
Sounds intriguing.
Blood Orange Ale. It's actually one of the 12 beers of the apocalypse I found, by the way. 12 beers of the apocalypse.
That's pretty awesome.
That's
even
8.
better than the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Because there's 12.
And you get to drink them.
Anyway, actually mine's really light and I can taste the blood orange.
Yeah?
Which is a little different because I've never had a blood orange.
Really? You've never had a blood orange?
I've never had a blood orange beer.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's why I can taste the blood orange.
Yeah.
But anyway, but we need to find out more about these beers of the apocalypse because I feel like we need to conquer them all.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So, as I hit my mic. So 12 beers of the apocalypse. This is, you said we were talking before the show, number 8?
This is number 8.
8 black. Oh, you missed the black hole maelstrom. It's actually the black hole maelstrom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Black hole.
So, which is, as it says on there, named after
There's a cool little reading. It says, if the world were coming to an end, what beer would you brew? Utilizing artwork by Seattle native Charles Burns from his graphic novel classic Black Hole, Seattle's Elysian Brewing and Fantagraphic Books team up to answer the question with the 12 beers of the apocalypse. Anyway,
that is a fantastic idea.
And it's got some cool art.
I'm disappointed I didn't think of it.
It's got some cool art on it from his graphic novel, and we need to check that out. Which brings us, I wonder if you can actually look that up really quick, Wendell.
Yeah.
While we're going into this.
We interrupt this program to bring
this broadcast to bring you this important
Science fiction garbage.
And that brings us to our new segment, or newer segment to this podcast, The Last Frequency. Where basically, I just want to talk about anything having to do with post-apocalypse, dystopian, whatever I want to talk about that we're not actually scheduled for in this segment. Which, first of all, Wendell, once you find out more about these beers of the apocalypse, we need to talk about those. Or perhaps this graphic novel you need to put in your other segment of the
All right.
show.
Well, here's just a little the little blurb about
I guess I could look
about the beers. This is right from the Elysian Brewing Company's website. In a year-long run up to the end of all time, according to the Mayan calendar, Elysian, and that's actually on the website, Elysian Brewing Company and Fantagraphics Books, both of Seattle, are planning a series of 12 beers issued on the 21st of each month in 2012 and featuring the label artwork of Charles Burns, taken from Burns' weirdly apocalyptic work, Black Hole. The labels will adorn Elysian's 12 beers of the apocalypse, featuring the creativity and unusual ingredients for which its brewing team is known. What 12 beers would you brew and drink if you knew they would be your last? And then it goes on to explain some other things, but we'll link this in the show notes up on the website, and people can go take a look at it. If anybody knows where we can find these, by all means, be sure and shoot us an email or give us a call. But we'll try to take a look before the next episode, and we'll maybe over the next few episodes highlight some of these beers as we're able to find them.
Remember, the end is beer.
Ooh, that's that.
That's what it says on the bottle. See, these are awesome. These are just cool to look at, and we need to do our research on these.
Yeah. All right. Good find.
Yeah, it was awesome. Let's see. Where did I go? I went to. Oh my God, what market did I go to? It wasn't Top Foods. It was the other one.
Central.
Thank you.
Market.
Central Market. And since we're talking about RoboCop, which we didn't explain at the very beginning of this, but as we recall from last episode, we are talking about RoboCop, the original, and Looper this week. So as some of you may know, we're actually getting news more and more about this RoboCop reboot. And the question I've been looking for is like whether or not it's actually a reboot or if it's another chapter. Because I'm not.
Well, is it a reboot or a remake? Because is it reboot, remake, or sequel? Because there's kind of three things, right? You've got a reboot. You've got the reboot, which would be like kind of like this, the Star Trek movie that came out, where they actually retelling a story but set in a new universe type of thing. Sure. Then you've got the remakes, and then you've got more just straight up sequels.
Well, let me read this sort of synopsis that they released on one of my favorite sites, Geek Tyrant, which it's just fans like us putting up news that they hear from wherever they hear it from. So in RoboCop, the year is 2029, and the conglomerate OmniCorp is the center of the robot technology. Their drones are winning American wars around the globe, and now they want to bring this technology to the home front. Alex Murphy is a loving husband, father, and good cop, doing his best to stern the tide of crime and corruption in Detroit. And it looks like it's pretty much the same story, but it looks like OmniCorp is a little different in terms of what they're doing with the technology.
So it sounds like this would be kind of more considered either a remake or a reboot of the original movie, not another story in the RoboCop line like RoboCop 2 or 3.
Yeah, because they bring they start talking about at the what is it, the ES 209, the robot, the walking robot that we see in RoboCop. Please help me, ED 209.
Oh, you're talking about the actual the big robotic walker that ends up shooting the guy all to pieces at the at the big meeting.
Yeah, the one that's in claymation.
Oh,
which actually was stop motion.
Yeah,
obviously, but yeah. Anyway,
so we'll get into that here in a second. I've got a few issues with that.
Yeah, it looks like they're bringing him back, and they might have some other drones that they're going to bring into this whole RoboCop franchise. But it looks pretty much like just a reboot. They're just retelling sort of the same story. And then I know last time I brought up. By the way, I wanted to tell you who was in it. Let's see, Joel Kinnaman, which I don't think he's kind of a new guy, which I think is great for.
So this is the new one,
the RoboCop. Yeah,
this is the guy that's in the new one. Okay,
this is the new one. Gary Oldman is playing the scientist who creates RoboCop, and Samuel Jackson's in there as probably the black guy in the movie. As the media mogul Pat Novak. I'm trying to remember who Pat Novak was now.
Was he in the original?
Was he the?
Was that character in the original?
Yeah, I believe so. Pat Novak. I remember that name. Jeez, I'm going blank now. What's up with that? Anyway, I'll find him later, and I'll talk about him later. And then last time I brought up Max Fury. Max Fury. Mad Max Fury Road. Fury Road is the name of the new one. But it had. Man, I'm just going blank on names tonight. There's so many names down here. Looks like a lot of people, a lot of awesome people. But Mad Max is caught up with a group of people fleeing across the wasteland in a war rig driven by the Imperator Furiosa. I like the Imperator. This movie is an account of the war road which follows. It is based on the word burgers of the history men and eyewitness accounts of those who survived. So obviously a different story from. It's not a reboot or remake, but a different story.
Interesting.
Mad Max
universe. Okay. So now we're talking Mad Max, not RoboCop.
Sorry.
We
went.
All right. We jumped something here, and I wasn't sure where we were going with that.
I forgot to transition.
All right.
I'm working on it. I'm sorry. But I think that's all I have for now.
All right. So Niles, why don't you cue up the little RoboCop trailer, or not trailer, the little RoboCop synopsis we've got.
Oh, yes, I would if I had that in front of me right now.
All right. Well, I guess we'll just have to read it.
I believe you were going to read that.
What kind of? Let's see. All right, you ready?
Okay.
All right, you ready? Here we go. In a dystopic and crime-ridden Detroit, I almost said New York, a terminally wounded cop returns to the force as a powerful cyborg with submerged memories haunting him. Directed by Paul Verhoeven. Starring Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, and Dan O'Harely.
We went back to the room.
Oh,
back for that.
Yeah. I see that.
Who was that? Oh, man.
I don't know. That was a weird room. Hopefully we don't go back to that room again. That room was very echoey. There was a lot of bad stuff in that room. All right, so yeah, RoboCop. I realized this is a movie that I was 5 when this movie came out in 1987. To date myself a little bit, you were just
87, right?
You were not born yet.
This is 87, right?
Yes.
What month does it say? What month?
Does not specifically say, because that matters.
Because that matters.
For once, that matters.
I was born July 87.
All right, so we're going to go on a limb here and say Niles was born the year RoboCop came out.
That's right,
so needless to say, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Niles did not see RoboCop in the theaters when it was out.
Nope.
I did not see RoboCop in the theaters when it came out as well.
I was just a baby.
RoboCop was a lot gorier than I was honestly expecting it to be, and it would not have been appropriate for a 5-year-old.
So gory.
Yeah, so I'd heard a lot about RoboCop, as far as kind of being almost a cult
Wendell,
classic.
be quiet. You're so loud in my ear right now.
Almost kind of a cult classic kind of a thing, but I'd never actually seen it. I enjoyed it. I thought
Wait, this was your first time seeing it.
Yeah, this was my first time seeing it. I had never seen this movie
Totally
before.
forgot.
I'd heard people referring to, Alex Murphy and all that kind of stuff before, but
Murphy.
I had no idea what references they were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty well done for what it was. It was not trying to be, as a lot of the movies that we're going to talk about on this podcast, it was not trying to be a literary, it wouldn't be a literary work, a visual work? What's the right word here?
I know what you're trying to...
Not literary.
Yeah. I know
anyway,
what you're trying to say.
That word, work, that, that tries to transcend what it is. It knew what it was, and it was comfortable with being what it was.
I know what you're talking about. I just can't think of the word right now.
So yeah,
this pizza place we're in. It's sucking my brain powers.
So how about you? This was not your first time seeing it?
Oh yeah, I think I've seen it like 3 times in total. It's been a while, but the coolest part about RoboCop was just the effects in it were just all the prosthetic work they were doing and all the blood work, and it was kind of really cool. The whole claymation thing was kind of funny because the guy actually did the stop motion was the guy that did Star Wars.
Yeah. So here's my question.
So
1977, Star Wars looked great. What the heck happened in the meantime? Because nothing in Star Wars looked as terrible 10 years earlier as that in 1987. Seriously, in Star Wars you had, granted the AT-ATs and that stuff in Empire Strikes Back, that would have been, 82, 83? So it was really only 5-6 years before RoboCop. But the AT-ATs did not look anywhere close to as bad as this weird thing. Like it was completely out of place. Like everything
really
else in the movie fit. This did not fit. This reminded me of a bad B-70s movie.
Well, the hard part was with a lot of the effects in RoboCop was they used it was prosthetic work. It was all this other traditional effect work, and then you have this ED-209.
Yeah, but you know how they did R2-D2? They stuck a little person into a suit. This robot was not little.
Well, you can't really stick a little person into this suit.
No, you could have stuck you totally could have stuck a big person in this suit.
That's a lot of robotic work that they needed to do.
No, it's not any robotic work. It would not have been that difficult to make that suit at least to where a person could have fit into it and made it not have to be stop motion. The whole stop motion thing to me, I don't know. Maybe it was cheaper. Maybe it was less time consuming, although even that, maybe there were just logistics that they didn't want to have to worry about as far as using a person. But it felt like a cop-out. Cop-out. Yeah. All right. Don't worry, folks. I'll be here all week.
I can't get to the soundboard fast enough.
Boo! Yeah. No, so
again, the effects, besides ED-209.
With the exception of that, I agree.
I thought the effects were good. I liked the characters. I didn't really like what's her face.
Oh, the actor that played
Nancy
Ann Lewis, Nancy Allen.
Yeah, Nancy Allen. I don't know. I don't like her.
What else? Let's see. What else has she been in?
She plays in one of the other RoboCops as well. But
was she in anything else?
Pull up the IMDb.
Law and Order.
IMDb.
Outer Limits, Touched by an Angel. RoboCop 3, and that's going back to 93. So not a whole lot that is
it's
judging Amy the Division. Yeah, so actually the last movie that she is credited for on IMDb is My Apocalypse in 2008, and before that was Law and Order in 2003.
So she was kind of a
it looks like she was more, although I suppose that's recent. Back in the 80s and 90s, the Gladiator, the movie, the TV movie.
Ooh.
So yeah, you're right. I mean, it does not look like she was in a lot of other stuff that people may know her for.
Well, I mean, I don't know Peter Weller's history very much, but I mean, I can only see him in RoboCop. I mean, I cannot name off the top of my head. I cannot name anything that Peter Weller was in besides the RoboCops. So I mean,
looks like he did a lot of voices. He's been in House.
He's doing a lot of TVs, and
he's been in House and Dexter.
He's been in a lot of in the TVs. He's been in a lot.
He was in Fringe. I didn't know he was in Fringe. Monk 24. So it actually looks like he was been in a lot of. He was in Star Trek Enterprise. It looks like he's been all over the place in TV, but TV. Not a whole lot of movies.
And then you have the director, Paul Verhoeven, who's Dutch, but he did Total Recall. Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Starship Troopers, which I love that movie, even though it sucks, but it's Starship Troopers. Can't go wrong with that. And so, I mean, he's done some great stuff in terms of that kind of genre. But I think that's going back to how bloody it was. I think that's because he's coming from this sort of, I guess, Dutch sort of French sort of perspective of violence and stuff in films. They tend to be more violent. They tend to go a little farther than the American Hollywood norm for something like that.
A little bit more, not curated experience, but a little bit more. The scene that kind of shocked me a little bit was and I realized we were going to talk about this at the top of the show. Prior warning. We realized RoboCop came out in 87. We are going to talk about Looper, which is out in theaters now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, which, spoilers! By the way, you don't want to be spoiled about Looper. So if you have not seen Looper yet and you are planning on watching it, which we highly recommend you plan on watching it, turn it off. Turn off the podcast before we get to the Looper segment.
Turn off your computer.
Yes. Or phone, or whatever it is.
System failure.
So anyway, where was I going with that?
Spoilers.
Spoiling and the scene with RoboCop, right?
Okay.
So the scene where they shot where he was getting shot by those the
perfect scene
whatever they were
for you to bring up because I want to talk more about that scene.
Well, where he got shot and they like shot his arm off with the shotgun and you could see like the bone splintering out. Mm-hmm. That I was shocked by that. I mean, it didn't bother me in the sense because I mean it's a movie. But at the same time, I was not expecting it. I was not expecting that level of kind of blood and gore from a lot of these sci-fi movies. They have violence. Take something like The Matrix, for example. Mm-hmm. The Matrix has violence, but it's not a graphic violence. Like when somebody gets shot, they get shot, they might bleed a little bit, but there's not that like seeing that visceral experience. Like RoboCop definitely had a very visceral feel to it.
A lot of the films in I would say the 80s and early 90s tended to be more of that kind of brutal. I don't know. They tended to go more that direction. But what making faces over there?
I'm just trying to play some music.
He's making faces at me. So I mean, they tended to be more. They tended to be more violent. Which ooh.
This is just as an aside. This is a part of this is called Robo Lives. It's from the RoboCop soundtrack by Basil Polidoris, and we'll get into him in just a second.
Yeah.
Now, as I continue about talking about 80s movies.
No, I wanted to talk about the scene. So at this point in the movie, when he's being shot up, we don't get to know him very well. Like he comes in the office and all of a sudden he's this new hotshot on the field, and then he goes out and does this mission with Nancy. Is it Nancy? What's her name in the movie? I can't remember.
Anne
Thank
Lewis.
Thank you.
I believe it was Anne Lewis.
But So I was reading up on this a little bit, and the idea was, in order to bring us to a point where we felt something for him, like felt sorry for him, we almost had to. They went to the extreme of making it almost like this crucifixion.
Hey, does this sound familiar? Needing to be able to empathize with a character who at some point becomes much more like a robot? Does that sound like maybe episode 1 of the Dystopic Boys when we talked about Judge Dredd?
So, but I think it worked better in RoboCop than it does in Judge Dredd.
Well, it's almost because they went the reverse direction.
Well, yeah.
In Judge Dredd, they started with him being the...
That is a great point, Wendell.
They started with him being the robotic character and wanted you to empathize with him at the end. In RoboCop, they almost started it the other direction. Had you empathize at the beginning, turned him into this RoboCop, and then at the end, because of that, you were empathizing for what he had become.
Mm-hmm. And the idea was, all of a sudden he gets shot up to this point of like being crucified. Crucified on the cross or whatever. But so you start feeling sorry for him when his arms get blown off, and then all of a sudden his head gets blown off. You start to actually feel something for him because of how much just hell he's just been through. And then we come to the point where he's being rebuilt, and so you kind of have this like, it's like, is he gonna be okay? Type of thing. So,
but then by the end, you get that feeling that there is no part of him left. Like the part that made him who he was is no longer there.
Well, they explore that more in like the second movie, I believe.
Well, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The comic
where his wife comes.
Yeah,
and like in the second movie, I think. But I mean, at the end of the first one, you start to you think maybe there could be some of Murphy, like, because he says he wants he is Murphy. That's what he
true.
Says.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end.
So before we move on from that one scene, though, the other aspect of this is I realized that scene was there so that we will empathize for him as a character. But what about the characters of the bad guys in that? It almost took me a little out of the movie how over the top those characters were with their glee of what they were doing. Like it was a little too. It was a feeling of like that was it. The when they were shooting him, right? They were almost gleeful about it. It was this fun thing they were doing. It was not just something that they needed to do because they weren't scared about it. They weren't worried about any repercussions, anything like that. It was it almost had to me not a serial murder mentality, but a kind of a complete crazy person mentality. It was just somebody completely out of touch with any sense of reality. And to have 5 or 6 people in one room, all with this same mentality, and not a single one of them had any hesitation of like stepping back and saying, wait, is this really such a good idea? Do I want to be a part of this? It was a little bit, I realize we're talking about a sci-fi movie here, but a little unrealistic. It didn't feel like it was something that would ever actually happen. And
there should be at least one of them maybe that was like,
yeah, maybe just at least somebody having a little sense of like.
There's the one guy that like doesn't shoot, and he's like, "Come on, shoot him!" And then he like finally lets off a shot, reluctantly or whatever. But
exactly. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting how they actually almost portrayed the bad guys as being a little unrealistic in what they brought to that scene in particular.
Yeah.
It almost made you empathize with him more, with that character more, because of how crazy the other side of it was.
Yeah.
So,
where'd the background music go? What's more background music?
It stopped.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
we'll get that going.
Yeah. I mean, so is there any other point you wanted to bring up?
Well,
I mean, is there any other?
So I guess the main question at this point then is, how does that fit into what we talk about on this podcast as far as the dystopian theme and or post-apocalyptic themes? It's obviously not a post-apocalyptic movie, but I definitely think it falls into that dystopian direction, right? It's showing a future where old Detroit, as they portrayed it, and old Detroit having all of this crime and needing to clean up the streets, and the cops as they stand aren't enough. So how do you do it? Well, there were 2 different schools of thoughts, right? There's the RoboCop side, and then there's the complete robot side. Yeah, more warbot.
Frida's trying to get out of there. You should let her out. There you go.
That would be the dystopian Chihuahua.
But no, I mean, then we also have this idea of this new city.
Yeah, almost pulling a utopia out of a dystopia.
Yeah, trying to build the.
It's almost, if you think to the movie, and I realize we have not actually watched this movie for the podcast yet, but if you think about the movie Demolition Man, right? Demolition Man is a future. It's almost a future that could have been the new Detroit, right?
Delta City. Got it.
Yeah, okay. Delta City. So if you think about Demolition Man, that could almost be the new future that is New Detroit or Delta City. The basically paving across the underbelly, the alleyways, the old city, and building this bright shining thing. But yet at the center, there's still going to be this core of corruption and
yeah, there's still this crap hole.
Exactly, there's still this crap hole. It's just you cover it up with a locked sewer cover, manhole cover.
Going back to Tim Burton Batman.
So in that sense, I definitely think it falls into that dystopian where there's a segment, even if it hasn't reached that point yet, there's going to be a segment of society that doesn't fit with the perfect future that the OCP corporation.
Yeah, we were talking about this movie kind of hovers on like sort of the beginnings of films like Judge Dredd or whatever. It's kind of
it's like you could see, let's say that they take the RoboCop, and you could see RoboCop turning into a Judge Dredd type of society where it's there is no judge, there is no jury. It's one man out there making the decisions for everyone, or making the decisions based off of a set of rules.
Yeah.
So I think that I definitely think it fits into the theme. It's just on the early edges of that theme. It's what it could become, not necessarily what it currently is.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's definitely it is about OmniCorp and the successes and how they are controlling the police. I mean, I think that's a big point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Society is being controlled by.
Yeah, I think one other thing that I just literally just right now thought about is that we always think about dystopian movies and literature and things being about an overall society. Well, this could almost be a dystopian tale of one man, right? You've got the story of Alex Murphy and this corporation turning him into something and keeping down his humanity and basically trying to kill who he is as a person.
Yeah.
So in a way, you could, and I realize I'm not normally the person to look for metaphors in movies, but you could almost say that Alex Murphy, I know, I did. What is coming to this world? You could almost say that Alex Murphy is a metaphor for society, and that he is the representation of what society could be if we're not careful.
I think this requires a...
Yeah. Don't get used to it. Occasionally great things happen.
No, that's an awesome point. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of shrink the whole story down into the fact that oh yeah, of course. And
we haven't even started talking about Looper yet. We're already 30 minutes.
No, I mean, you can shrink the story down into this idea that this corporation is keeping him down. I like that. It's very good, Wendell.
I know. All right. Okay.
But
so
I want to start talking about. I just want to go straight into the comics here. So
okay.
Let's jump into
let's jump into the.
Which means that's my cue.
That is your cue
for this.
Paper. Have you ever seen paper?
All right. So that bumper, the sound of that means it's time for the brand new segment, Lost Pages. For anybody who's been following the website, dystopicradio.com, the Lost Pages segment is something that we're doing to kind of cover things that don't necessarily fall into movies or music. Of the books, the comics, the pages of...
For those of you who like to read out there, this segment's for you.
And let's face it, Niles is not exactly what you would call a reader. Now, graphic novels, yes, granted, but the books...
I really want to be a better... I want to be a better reader, Daddy. But I mean, I want to be a better reader. I mean, I want to be more into like just sitting down and reading books, more and more books. But I don't know. I'm ADD when it comes to sitting down. Doing that.
So that's where I take over, and then that's why I'm running the Lost Pages segment. So this week on the website we covered two different things. We covered related to RoboCop. We covered Frank Miller's RoboCop, which is a small mini series that was created. It's 9 issues, and I read through those 9 issues. I'm kind of new to the comics. I haven't read a whole lot of them, but this one was pretty interesting from the story perspective. That it was based on some of the notes and things that Frank Miller actually had for a potential RoboCop 2 that were not ended up being used for RoboCop 2. He actually did not write or illustrate this comic series. He was kind of a directive force behind it. Miller was kind of he directed the direction of it, but he did not actually write it or illustrate it. But the series, it's set right after the events of RoboCop 1, and it kind of puts RoboCop in another scenario where he has to, he basically gets turned into a villain. It's almost the Spider-Man effect, right, from the Spider-Man movies,
or the Batman effect.
Yeah, where you're the hero, where you're the hero, and then you get vilified by the villains to make them seem better, and then by the end you become vilified. Then by the end, I think it's a word. I think it's the adjective of villain. Synopsises. By the end, he becomes the hero again, and actually the end of the comic was actually really poignant. There's the word of the day. Yeah, we're gonna have a word of the day. That's a good one. All right. So the end of the comic is actually a very nice, a very good moment, and actually leaves a lot of open-ended options for RoboCop. Now, fans of the second and third movies, Frank Miller's RoboCop is not necessarily considered canonical. It does not stick to any type of storyline that is continued in RoboCop 2 or 3 or other comic series. So you have to look at it more as a standalone thing.
Yeah, I mean, so the comics are pretty standalone from
this particular comic series. There are some other comics that were by Dark Horse, I believe it was. This was by Avatar, but there were some other ones that were by Dark Horse Comics that do follow I believe it's between RoboCop 1 and RoboCop 2. This one is more set up as a sequel to RoboCop 1 without any intent for there to be kind of continuation beyond that point. Okay. And as long as you go into it reading it from that perspective, it was actually really good. Now, the one thing I did not like about it was I felt the illustrator didn't do as good of a job with like light and shadow in his drawings as what I think Frank Miller would have.
You're talking about, did it just seem like there was like too much going on in terms of
color?
A
lot of the panels, especially, let's face it, it's RoboCop. There's a lot of explosions. A lot of the explosions, there's so much.
There better be.
There's so much flame and fire and all of that, and that's fine. But you have to draw it in a way that makes so that you can see what the subject of that panel is. And when you have to sit there, and there were some of them where it's like I'd sit there and look at a panel for 5 or 10 seconds trying to figure out what is going on here, and then I realize, oh, okay, that's this, and it's on fire, and he just got ejected out of a window by the explosion. Got it. So it's like you have to kind of like, when you actually then look back at it, it's like it makes sense. But at first glance, it's like, what is going on with this panel? Because it's so much busyness in the artwork, which has its place. But I really liked how Frank Miller did like Sin City and 300 in the graphic novels, and I think that would have been a better portrayal of this world and of that kind of some of that stuff. So that was one of the things we covered, and the other one we covered was actually a book that was recommended to us by our number one fan, Nick. I can't say his last name.
I'm gonna get in trouble if I actually it's Davinsky, I believe.
So
I'm sorry, Nick, if I just screwed that up.
He recommended the book called The Giver by Lois Lowry. It's actually a young adult book that was published in, I believe it was 1993, and I had never heard of this book before, and I sat down and read it. It was over the course of several nights, a couple of hours each night, and one of the best books that I've read dystopian-wise in a while. It really resonated. The world, it's set in kind of a... They don't really say where it's set or what time period or anything like that. All we know is it's from the point of view of a kind of a soon-to-be teenager, and how he goes through the next year or two of his life being chosen for a very highly revered role, and what he starts to find out about his world and the life that has been chosen for him and for his people.
Now, so without spoiling too much, I mean, how does it? You were kind of explaining it to me earlier. How does it fall into this kind of dystopian?
So think about.
feeling?
I'm going to draw a blank here on the movie. The movie. Actually, no, that might spoil it. Basically, you know, you know the movie I'm talking about.
Okay.
So it's coming from the perspective of a very curated world. The main character's name is Jonas, and he lives in this world where choices are made for you. The job that you're going to be doing is made. The choice for that job is made for you. As you're growing up, every age has something that you're given. So, you know, age, I believe it's when you turn 8 years old is when you get a bicycle. Whoopee. When you turn 7, that's when girls get to stop wearing their hair long.
Yeah,
when they turn...
That's what I'm talking about.
That's a little weird.
I'm not talking about the 7. I'm talking about the hair long.
Okay.
Sorry.
When you turn...
He's a pedophile!
There's different... There were different things like when people would turn 6, their coats turn from button snaps to or from snaps to buttons, representing that they're now reaching an age where they can
actually
dress themselves so it's like there are certain things at different ages that are basically handed out, and it starts to show this world where there is no freedom of choice, there is no freedom of expression. It's the world is what has been made for it by a group of elders, and these elders have, you know, passed on from generation to generation, new elders, things like that. So a really good book. I highly recommend it. There were 2 others written in the same universe, not necessarily sequels, and she actually has a new one, I believe it's already out, called The Sun, that is an actual direct sequel to the original.
What was her name? Author?
Lois Lowry. And we'll put some of that stuff in the show notes as well. But yeah, if you're interested in that, go to dystopicradio.com and click on the Lost Pages link at the top. And we cover a little bit of that stuff, have some links and things like that. So yeah. All right, Niles. It's time.
Oh, okay.
It's time.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Okay. All right. In 2072, when the mob wants to get rid of someone, the target is sent 30 years into the past, where a hired gun awaits. Someone like Joe, who one day learns the mob wants to close the loop by transporting back Joe's future self.
Hey, freak, get out of the room.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Man, who was that guy? Man, I'm glad we're in here because that was a weird place out there.
You can hear him from outside.
I know.
But thank you for describing Looper to us, sir. Random sir. Thank you very much. So the movie I wanted to go see this again.
I know. I walked out of the movie and wanted to go see it like right then.
It's like the first time
it was really good.
It's like the first time I watched The Matrix and I was like, what?
And The Inception for me.
Oh yeah.
Like The Matrix and The Matrix and Inception were both that same way for me.
It was the Inception that you were feeling.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when I walked out of it, I felt like I was in a dream.
It was the moment that you finally get out of all these layers of dreams, and then, oh wait, I'm still dreaming.
Exactly.
In this world. Yeah.
All right, so this is the point where if you don't want to be spoiled for this movie, and you don't want to be spoiled for this movie, pause it, go watch the movie.
Spoils will be had.
Pause it, go watch the movie, and then finish the podcast, because the movie is that good, it's not worth being spoiled for the movie. So you've been duly warned.
And the coolest, the best part about Looper was they kept the time travel simple in a sense. Like they didn't get caught up in this whole. They didn't get caught up in the science of it. They just said, "Hey, this is what it is. This is the time travel that we're dealing with. Here's the story." And
you know, in some ways, they almost treated the time travel as, like kind of like Back to the Future did.
It was really a secondary.
It was. You could have told this story in a lot of different ways. It would not necessarily had to have been time travel as the vehicle for that the vehicle for the story. Mm-hmm. But I think by using time travel and using the characters. So for those who have not seen the movie yet, and go watch the movie. Joseph Gordon.
Don't be stupid.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays a looper who is someone that basically takes care of the future's trash.
He is hired to go back into the past to kill people from his time.
No, he's not hired to go back into the past. He is in the past, and he is hired to kill people that the future sent. This is the problem with time travel. He is hired.
No, but he goes into the future though.
No, he doesn't. No,
that's right.
He stands
See,
there.
Look, I'm
exactly.
I'm like I'm losing my balls right now.
He stands there and waits for the future to send back someone from the past who he promptly kills.
I'm sorry,
and
that was dumb.
Yeah.
That was dumb of me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, and then the idea is closing the loop is when the looper ends up being sent from the future, ends up being sent back, and you end up.
I'm sorry, he can't come from the past the future because that's where his future self is.
Exactly, yeah. So you end up having to kill your future self, and so Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays the present character, while Bruce Willis plays his future self. And one interesting thing that they did, and I've heard conflicting opinions on it, is they didn't just try to make up this fiction where Joseph Gordon-Levitt looks like himself and Bruce Willis looks like himself, but they're still the same character. They actually took Joseph Gordon-Levitt and added prosthetics. That word. They added prosthetics and makeup and things and contacts and stuff, and they really made him look like what I think a younger Bruce Willis could have looked like. Maybe not actually how he did look, but how he could have looked.
Well, according to Bruce Willis, I believe in some interviews, he was like, it was kind of creepy. Like when he was looking at Joe across the table, he was like, it was like looking sort of at himself.
I can see where that would be weird.
It'd be cool to find out if they actually took pictures of a young Bruce Willis and just.
I bet they did.
Sort of added to it.
I can just see it calling up Bruce Willis's mom and being like, "Hey, do you have any pictures from when he was like 18?
Hey, I'm Ryan Johnson, and I'm doing a movie, and I wanted to. Can we get some younger pictures of Bruce Willis, please, so we can make somebody else look like him? I want to hear that phone call.
Oh, this also I forgot to mention. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt played Joe. Bruce Willis played Old Joe, as he's listed on IMDb. And then you've got Emily Blunt playing Sarah.
So hot.
And Niles has a slight crush on Emily Blunt.
It's the accent. To her, I'm the accent.
So this movie has been described in a lot of reviews as being another kind of a genre-defining movie, as similar to Star Wars in the 70s and Back to the Future and The Matrix in the late 90s and even Inception back in the mid to late, I guess, late 2000s. So I don't know. What do you think about
Inception in the late 2000s?
Yeah, wasn't that late 2000?
No, Inception was like.
Was that 2010?
It was, yeah. It's like,
oh wow,
it was 2 years ago.
Only a couple years
because it was
ago.
before the Dark Knight, so it was last. Oh god, I can't remember. Yeah, it was only like 2 years ago.
All right,
so
all right.
Not that far. Anyway,
time flies.
Time travels.
Wah, wah, wah. Where's the sad trombone?
Boo!
Exactly. All right. So no, what do you think that it fits in with that kind of? Are we going to be talking? So we still talk about Star Wars 30 years later.
Oh yeah, I think
we still talk about The Matrix 13 years later. 20, 30, 40 years from now, are people still going to talk about Looper in some of the same sentences that they would a Matrix or a Star Wars?
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be in the realms of more of like a 12 Monkeys. Like
you realize I've never actually seen that, right?
No, but I mean, you know about it, right?
No.
You don't even know about 12 Monkeys?
I had never heard of 12 Monkeys before we pulled up the list for this podcast and started looking at this. So that's a bad example.
It's a good example for me, but I'm sorry.
No,
I gotta cater to the Wendell.
But that's my exact point. Is movies like The Matrix and Star Wars were not for people like you. They defined a genre for people like me that had never heard of a 12 Monkeys, had never heard of The Road, had never heard of any of these other movies. So is Looper, I keep saying the in front of other words that don't need the in front of it. All right. Is Looper going to be said 20 or 30 years from now in the same sentences as The Matrix and Star Wars?
I hope so. I don't think so. The thing is with Star Wars and The Matrix is they were so like they were so ahead of their they were ahead of their time. At least Star Wars was. But they totally brought up this new idea of what sci-fi or movies could be. I would hope Looper could make it up there. I don't think it's going to.
Well, I actually think The Matrix was the same way. Because if you think about that concept, like back in the late 90s, the internet was just the internet-connected world was just starting to become a true reality. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, the internet existed, but it was not nearly the mainstream as what it is today. The almost necessity is what it is today. So The Matrix in the late 90s was approaching this territory of like, imagine if you could go into this world and be in this world as not just as though you were there, but for your reality it is. And then imagine that world exists not for pleasure or anything like that, but to keep you as a battery. Mm-hmm. As a power source for machines. Yeah. And that to me is a topic and a genre that, was groundbreaking for that time. Mm-hmm. Now, like you said, I hope Looper is talked about the same way, and I think for people like us who really enjoy this genre, I think it is going to be. Like, I don't think there has been a movie like Looper before where it approaches it. There are things that they talked about in Looper that I've never heard before. Mm-hmm. But, like, look at the box office hits, right? Taken 2, which is a sequel to an arguably bad movie with Liam Neeson.
It was fun, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it was fun, but it was nothing out of the ordinary. It was a Liam Neeson movie where he says,
"I'm so
you better hope I don't find you." Yeah,
kick your ass.
Taken 2 in like 1 or 2 nights took the box office by storm. Right?
Well, and Hotel Transylvania.
Oh yeah,
took the box office the next weekend after that. So I mean but when Matrix first came out, I don't believe it was as big. It was definitely one of those cult movies that got bigger and bigger and bigger as the decade went on. So
that's true.
I mean,
so maybe
the Matrix,
maybe Looper will be
probably started off like I'm sure Looper did. I'm not sure. I haven't done all my research on that, but I really don't think Matrix was because I believe everybody was confused as hell, and Matrix was done by the Wachowski brothers, who are not the Wachowski brothers anymore. Who, I mean, at the time, I believe that was their first big break into filmmaking was The Matrix. So I mean, here's these new guys. I mean, if we look at Ryan Johnson, I mean, he did Brick, which was this indie film with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, sort of a noir style, and then he does this kind of crime thriller, The Brothers Bloom, which I know did not get that much attention at all, and then he does this film called Looper. And so, I mean, here I think we have a similar story with The Matrix. Is we have these newcomers to this genre-bending film, and so I believe Looper could be, a possible Matrix, talk about, a decade later. I mean, we have films like 12 Monkeys that still get talked about because they took this genre and
I think a movie. I think like I said, I've never seen the 12 Monkeys, but I think a movie like that commercial success does not necessarily equal the definition of a genre-defining movie.
No, and Looper is not. Well, Looper is not getting that much.
Or is it? Can you say it's genre-defining if it is not a smashing commercial success? I think that depends on the next 10 years.
Oh yeah.
I think if 10 years from now they are making movies about topics like this because of what Looper did, then maybe you could argue that it is genre-defining. I think movies like Star Wars and The Matrix, they were genre-defining in the moment. For whatever the reason may be. The Matrix was because of things like bullet time, right? Before The Matrix, I don't know that any movies ever used that style of slow motion, pan the camera around in a circle while you basically pause the action, right? The Matrix basically...
I can't name anything.
Invented that as a storytelling device. And how many movies have we seen since The Matrix that, or even take it out of just video games?
That's a cliche.
Or take it out of just movies. Go to video games.
That's a cliche thing that they pull from it.
It's become. I mean, even in video games, like there's now a thing called bullet time.
Well,
that
I mean, even
you go into bullet time, and it means a slow motion where you can pan around the action as you're firing a gun, whether it's in a movie or video game.
Well, I mean, even like Star Wars, I know this was done before George Lucas did this, but the diagonal pan, the diagonal scene change you see, the scene swipe that you see. I mean, even if you see that nowadays, you think, oh, that's Star Wars or whatever. I know it was done before George Lucas, but it was such a piece of that film that everybody just link to that when you think about it.
Well, and I think that I keep on wanting to say the Looper, and I don't know why. I think that Looper could end up being something like that, where you could end up having, other movies in the genre told using plot devices and things that they used in this. Now, no, there's nothing. Things like the Matrix. Matrix had bullet time. Star Wars, they used miniatures, I think, in a way that not many movies had before. As far as like the starships and the camera angles and explosions to make it seem like zero gravity and things like that. Looper doesn't do a whole lot from a, I guess what's the right word, a cinematography perspective that hasn't been done before. But they do some things from like maybe music, right?
Yeah, we could. I mean, we'll talk about the soundtracks. We'll talk about the soundtracks a little later. But I mean, do you want to talk?
No, go ahead.
We don't want to talk about them now.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was listening to NPR and I wanted to get this soundbite in because it was a cool little interview. But where
all credit goes to NPR,
where Ryan Johnson talks a little bit about the idea of time travel in the movie. So I'll play that.
Time travel is complicated, so don't ask too many questions. Let's take a listen.
So do you know what's going to happen? You done all this already? As me?
I don't want to talk about time travel. Because if we start talking about it, then we're going to be here all day talking about it, making diagrams with straws.
We both know how this has to go down. I can't let you walk away from this diner alive. This is my life now. I earned it. You had yours already. So why don't you do what old men do and die?
Why don't you just take your little gun out between your legs and do it, boy?
There's at least one other scene in this film where a character is kind of reassuring the audience that if they don't get it, it's okay. Just don't think that hard. Don't try to figure out all the time travel stuff. Yeah. But I still found myself trying to figure out what looked like holes in the plot, mapping out this kind of time travel thing. Do you look at the film and say, oh, yeah, there was a little hole in the narrative there?
Yeah. Well, one of the things when I was writing it, because time travel is such a tricky thing to deal with when you're writing, and one of the things that was really liberating is looking at some of the all-time great time travel movies like 12 Monkeys or like Back to the Future, and seeing that if you look at those movies, and you don't even have to look that closely, you can find stuff that doesn't make sense. But the magic trick of those movies is it constructs this story where it really is like a magician with a deck of cards, that it kind of fools you into believing that it makes sense for 2 hours so that you can go along on this ride.
I mean, I love the point he makes that I mean, this is the whole idea. Like the whole idea with us and films is whether or not the film does its job in the 2-hour period of time that you have in the theater. I mean, whether you accepted what was going on the screen, which is, I hate people who overanalyze. I mean, I like to overanalyze stuff.
Well,
when you overanalyze something, it's like, did it make sense in the time, and would you go back and enjoy this idea again? I mean, that's the whole idea of how we. I think that's the definition of how we
exactly
like movies.
Did I sit there enjoying my time? Now, the interesting thing about so Ryan talked about some of the time travel aspects, right? And he actually talked specifically about Back to the Future. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I think has become kind of a convention of not movies, because I actually think that movies as a general rule have not treated time travel with what a lot of people conventionally understand time travel to be. But that's the fact that if you go back in time, the normal time travel's paradox is the whole, you go back in time, kill your grandfather before your dad is born. You cease to exist, therefore you can't go back in time to kill your grandfather, which therefore means he's alive, which means you are born, right? It's that typical paradox. But I think how a lot of books and stuff have treated this, and the generally accepted wisdom among, I guess, quote-unquote scientific community, is that if time travel is possible, which I don't believe there's anything in physics that says it is not possible to go to the past, is that if you change something, it does not change that timeline. It creates a new timeline. So the idea that in Back to the Future, Marty McFly could go back in time, see his mom and dad not kiss each other, and then he starts to disappear. That's generally accepted as not the way it would happen. That he's not going to disappear because he comes from a different timeline than the one that gets created. So it's
Marty,
almost
your mom needs to have sex with your dad.
So yeah, and Looper treats things a little bit the same way, right? Looper treats things in a way that says a future person can go back in time and change things, and you saw it with the way that Joe communicated with old Joe.
Yeah.
To get him to go to the right place, Joe cuts his own arm with a day and a time and a person's name.
I would love to have done that. That's what I would totally do.
That would be the worst thing ever. Are you kidding? And old Joe sees scars appear on his arm, and he starts remembering events that never happened to him, but now they did because Joe. It was
young Joe that did it to old Joe.
Joe did it to himself, and old Joe had it appear on his arm. So yeah, So they definitely stuck to kind of a conventional approach to time travel in that sense, instead of having, well, if young Joe cuts his arm, old Joe's not going to feel anything because it's a completely different timeline that gets created out of it. But despite that, I never once, while I was watching that movie, thought to myself, this is an unrealistic approach to time travel. And I think that's where the movie succeeds, is they make it complex enough that when I got out of the movie, I wanted to go watch it again to see what I missed. But they made it approachable enough that I was thoroughly entertained the entire time.
Well, yeah, and the time travel being sort of a secondary theme throughout the movie, and then you have this whole idea of, they start exploring, like, whether or not this is actually a good thing, whether he should be doing this, or, exploring the aspects of, does he have to follow, like, his future self's, does young Joe have to follow his future self's, life? Like, all of a sudden he finds Emily Blunt's character and, starts thinking, oh, maybe, this can happen instead of this Asian wife that I'm going to get.
Well, okay, so that's kind of, obviously in the story, Bruce Willis's character, Bruce Willis, goes back in time and basically wants to change the future because of something that happened to him in the future. So, but from young Joe's point of view, those things have not happened yet, and that is not his. That is to him. That is not his life. And if that is not something that he wants to happen, and he doesn't care about old Joe's life, then he doesn't need for those things to happen. So maybe he'll make different decisions, and that's where you start getting into some of those time paradoxes of, well, if young Joe does a different thing, will old Joe start ceasing to exist? And so basically, I think Looper does treat it pretty much the same way that Back to the Future does. But you know what? I sat through Back to the Future and loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
I never once thought about the inconsistencies with time travel and things like that. And I think that's where it succeeds.
Well, yeah. I mean, it doesn't. They make it work, and the characters really work, and yeah, it's just one of those. It's so enjoyable. I mean, just to watch the whole thing happen, and like the elements they were doing with all the characters, and how we saw Bruce Willis in a different. I mean, I saw Bruce Willis in a sort of a. I know one of our friends really hated it because Bruce Willis is yippee-ki-yay mother, fucker, and Ooh, I just said the F word over the podcast.
Oh, crap. We actually are going to have to bleep that. Otherwise, we're going to get explicit tag on iTunes for that one.
No, we get one, right? We get one?
You said it twice.
I only said one.
Wait, you said the F word then.
One.
Yeah, okay, so you did only say it once. Is it once? I have no idea how that works. So the actual thing, so you're talking about how Bruce Willis was in it, right? And so actually one thing that Ryan said, or not that Ryan said, but during the clip they played the scene where Bruce Willis and Joe Levitt are in the diner together. And if you listen to Levitt's voice, he did such an amazing job at taking on the mannerisms and being the way. I mean, Bruce Willis, he's a character actor, right? He always he's the same way. It doesn't matter what movie he's in.
Yeah.
He always has that same persona of kind of badassery. That's not a word, but
which is
you
why
get my
some
point.
people find it hard to believe that he could be so emotional in one of the scenes in the movie. Where
Yeah,
he
and
starts
okay,
killing kids.
yeah.
But
I get that, but at the same time,
in the course of the movie, I fell for it. So
I can at least buy it in the moment, whether or not in the grand scheme of things I can buy it. I see the point, but Levitt did a really good job at taking those mannerisms that have become a staple of a Bruce Willis character and really turning them into making us believe that this really is the same person, just younger.
Well, it was in the first 5 minutes of the movie. I remember not even thinking about the makeup anymore. It was just, okay, this is young Joe, which.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
say young
exactly.
Joe, old Joe, and it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I keep getting confused.
I know, because I know it took me for a little surprise there for a second when I realized that the character's name is actually Joe.
What's their character's name?
Yeah. It's Joe and old Joe. Got it.
And then the telekinesis powers. We have the mutant element of the story, which was a total surprise.
Yeah,
Which was a total surprise.
That was something that if there's one thing that felt a little tacked on about the movie, okay, yes and no. The entire end of the movie could not have existed if it was not for the telekinetic part.
Well,
because if you think about the kid, right, the whole concept of the bad guy in the movie, the Rain Man, and who he was as a kid, he has this power, and he has this power in a way that no one else has. So for those who have not seen the movie yet, who are not going to see the movie, Bruce Willis comes back because his wife in the future gets killed, and he's out to change that and make that not happen. And he does that by trying to take out the person that basically is behind his wife getting killed in the future.
Because in the future he's
called the Rain Man,
Rainmaker. The Rainmaker.
Rain Man. That's the one with Dustin Hoffman, right? Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman. I think. Yeah.
Hoffman. Yeah, and Anyway, the Rainmaker who closes all the loops, who's trying to close all the loops by killing off all the loopers, because he's disgruntled and unhappy about it. But you'll see go watch the movie, you'll figure out what we're talking about, and.
But it's really, really good and really, really well done. So a little bit about the music.
Let's talk about the music. Yeah.
As we posted up on the website earlier, I was about to say author, the director, composer. That's the word I'm looking for.
Nathan Johnson, you mean?
Yeah, the composer, Nathan Johnson. He really wanted to make this into the soundtrack to this, not just be just another oversweeping, grand, operatic soundtrack. He wanted to make it something that, especially in that world, this is a nitty-gritty world. This is a world where, as I was listening to the morning stream, they were talking this morning actually about Looper. Brian and Scott had seen it over the weekend, and they said that.
Oh, was it this morning?
Yeah, that was this morning.
I wish I listened to that.
You need to listen to that episode. So no, they were talking about, and I thought it was a good point of the world that they're in. It's like they still drive Chevy F-150s. They still drive Ford F-150s, but they've got solar panels strapped all over them because this is a world in the future where we don't have a lot of the things we have now, but it's still tied to what we know.
I love that they did that instead of sort of making these futuristic cars.
Exactly. Yes, they tied it to what we know, but made it into a world that 20 years from now, I can see things like that happening.
Now, I had to ask Ryan Johnson why young Joe was driving a Miata.
That's true. Well, in the future, maybe a affordable, quote unquote, gas conscious. I mean, if you think about if anybody's driving a Ford F-150 around with solar panels on it, gas has got to be at a premium.
How's the Miata though?
A Miata has like a 6, probably. I am the wrong person to talk to about cars.
It's a V4. It's a V2 engine.
Something like that. Anyway, so it does not use up as much gas as a V8 or a V10. We are not car people, obviously. So we apologize, Bryce and Jamie and
not Bryce. Sorry,
Bryce is a car guy.
No, it's more like Derek and my dad.
Well, that's true. Okay. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Sorry, Bryce.
No, but I think he wanted to make the music, going back to the music, he wanted to make the music in this movie into something that was not just, a grand sweeping thing, but something that tied into the world. And so to do that, he took real world sounds, car doors slamming, wrenches, different things like that. And then, yes, I realize that pitch shifting these days has a bad name because of dubstep, but I could care less as long as it lends credibility and.
You listen to the soundtrack, tell me if there's any dubstep in there. Yeah.
There's no dubstep in there. As long as it adds something to the movie, that's all that matters. Well, and I think that this absolutely added something to the movie.
Right, it's the whole idea of the best scores out there. I call them scores. I don't know if you were just calling them soundtracks.
Depends.
But the best scores out there are the ones that just you don't even realize they're there because they blend so well with what's going on. And I mean, blending can mean a bunch of different things. Like in this film, the soundtrack came up a couple times where there was a couple of those sweeping melodies that came in, but otherwise there was a couple of moments where the sounds from the film were appearing in the soundtrack. So all of a sudden you're like, you're not even thinking about it at the time. But best soundtracks are the ones that just disappear in the moment.
Well, I think it depends on the movie. I think there are movies. I mean, I think of movies like Gladiator, where you need that sweeping score to.
Yeah, it's true.
I think part of it is that how tied to the world we know are we? Mm-hmm. If it's a world that we have no idea about, we need something like a sweeping score to be able to relate emotionally to that, right? Kind of like what we talked about with the lack of film score to Time of the Wolf. Mm-hmm. My opinion is that there are certain movies we need that grand sweeping score, or we need that emotional connection to the movie. Some movies
but wouldn't you
that
say,
already have, like, I guess it's, wouldn't I say what?
But wouldn't you say that Looper was, would you say Looper kind of needed a sort of a grand sweeping?
No, I am not saying that. But the reason I'm saying that is because it did tie into so much of the world that we do know.
That's true.
The F-150s that drive around and the world that exactly. Yeah. You seem to have a real issue with that Miata.
It was like the only car in the film that didn't have solar panels on it.
That's true, and it was the only car that didn't look like it had been beaten to hell and back.
I mean, yeah, he took care of it, I guess, in a garage with a cover on it, but it was the only car that didn't have solar panels.
That's true, and yeah, that's true, and it's also the only car that you actually see parked in a garage.
Is it because he had money that he was able to pay for fuel? I mean,
that's true because he did seem to look. Yeah,
but he still had a Miata.
Anyway,
he had a Prius. I mean, for all if he wanted to be fuel conscious.
So no, I just think the way that he did the music was really lended itself to it. Added to the movie.
Oh yeah,
it did not, but it did not do what some scores do, which is take center stage. Mm-hmm. Some scores it's like you suddenly, as the music starts to swell, you suddenly feel so much more. This, you almost didn't realize the music was there, but I think if you took it out, you would notice the lack of it. You would notice the lack of it more than you notice the music being there.
Possibly. I mean, it's
hard to tell without actually taking the music out.
It's a good experiment to it. You can see how strong a movie is by taking out the soundtrack. I mean, yeah, you may notice, but you can also tell what makes a good movie between, whether or not you take the soundtrack away or not. It's a good test. You should do it.
But how can we do that? Like, we can't. It's that would be like karaoke for the reverse karaoke for movies.
You have to ask the director on that one.
Like, take the music out and just listen to the voices and see what you get out of the movie.
What I meant to say was you take all the sound away, and then that's how you realize how good the storytelling is without the sound. It's another topic for another day. It's a film class thing. I'm sorry.
Obviously.
I'm just gonna go sit over here and drink some more. So yeah, and then I mean, what about RoboCop? Did you want to go into RoboCop at all?
Well, so the RoboCop soundtrack being made in the 80s, definitely it actually had a very similar feel to me to like the Judge Dredd soundtrack, where some electronic music, it didn't. The fact that I don't have a whole lot to say about it kind of speaks for itself. I listened to the whole soundtrack and nothing jumps out at me, right? Yeah. There's nothing that particular. I think it did its job. It had its sad moments. It had its happy moments. It did its job. and it did its job without intruding. But there was nothing special about it necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. Because I agree.
Well put. Well put.
Wow, that was a horrible. I'm just gonna back away from the mic right now.
All right.
So you have something better to say.
I'm not sure about that. All right. So we've talked about anything else about Looper?
Probably, but I think we should probably call it quits until maybe we get our thoughts back together. I mean, was there any confusing parts that you wanted to talk about, or I mean?
I don't think so. I mean,
there was a cool little thing I found on slashfilm.com. It was an interview that they did with Ryan Johnson. He kind of covered these 10 topics that were sort of confusing the audience, like plot holes and stuff like that. If you go on a Slash Film, you can probably find it. We can probably link it on our show notes as well. Because it was really cool. Because I mean, if you're confused about certain elements, he kind of covers certain like ideas about these three sort of timelines that sort of exist and what certain characters do and how they sort of exist on these timelines. He kind of explains that a little bit. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean,
all right. So
we could keep.
We could talk about this for a long time, but at this point, we're already at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I think it's about
not
time
that we're
to,
timing ourselves at all.
So at this point, it's time to start thinking about the next episode.
Oh yes.
So along those lines, we've got the randomizer.
Ooh.
Which I think we forgot about that.
I don't even know if I don't even have that sound.
All right, so so this time around we are going to pick two movies.
Blip, 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 blip. Oh, not yet. Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna choose two movies instead of three. So I'm going to use random.org, which is a random number generator, to randomly generate a number between 2 and 68 to pick a movie from our movie list, which is a list that Niles and I went and grabbed from Wikipedia.
It's online.
That are Yeah, really? Wikipedia? You think it's online?
No, I mean on the website.
Oh, the movie list is online. All right. I'm like, yes, I think our viewers know
on
the
our
online.
website.
So, we've got a list of movies. I'm going to randomly generate a number. The random number is 58.
Bloop 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 bloop.
And the 58th movie is.
Oh God.
Number 58 is The Omega Man.
Oh, you know what? I have not seen that yet.
Neither have I, actually. So, all right, I'm making note of that. Okay, so that's from our list that we actually want to watch.
All right.
Now, let's see.
Wait, I should look that up.
From our second list, I need a number 1 through... Oh, there's a lot of movies on this list. Oh, please don't be Zardoz. 1 through...
Sean Connery likes Zardoz.
1 through 115. 115 movies on this list of movies that neither of us care about. The number is 28. Let's see what the number 28 movie is.
Oh, wait. Charlton Heston. Have I seen this? I can't remember. Sorry.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
I think I've.
I don't think I have. I know I have not seen it, but that actually
this is with
sounds familiar.
The people, the cult in the night, and sorry. Anyway,
don't spoil it for people.
Spoil it. They haven't.
All right, number 28 on the list of movies we have never heard of is a movie called Encrypt.
Encrypt.
Never heard of it.
Do you want
to? Yeah. Let's here. Let me pull up on IMDb really quick, assuming it even exists on IMDb.
Okay, Omega Man. Yeah, Charlton. Let's see, Charlton Heston. Oh God, this has got to be the movie that I've seen. It's with there's like these people in the night, and oh God, or is that The Last Man on Earth? I can't remember now. Hold on.
Encrypt. The summary on IMDb. Oh no, this is a sci-fi essentials movie.
A sci-fi essentials?
That's what the shows at the top of the DVD art. So in other words, this is a movie this was a made-for sci-fi movie.
Oh,
Oh, God. All right, here's the description. It was made for TV in 2003. I think this is the same thing. I have no idea. Maybe this is the same thing. Maybe it's not. The plot summary on IMDb for Encrypt is, by the year 2068, the Earth's ozone is gone. Violent and uncontrollable storms are raising its surface as a result. A small group of military survivors are the defenders of the last of humankind, and when Captain John Garth is approached to do a job by a former brother-in-arms, blah, 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 blah. All right, so
a sci-fi made movie.
That's going to be awful. So that's going to be our second movie. Our first one is called The Omega Man.
Now, on the other hand, we have, The Omega Man, starring Charlton Heston. Robert Neville, a doctor due to an experimental vaccine, is the only survivor of an apocalyptic war waged with biological weapons. The plague caused by the war has killed everyone else except for a few hundred deformed, nocturnal people. They're there, calling themselves the Family.
Wait, nocturnal people, like as in The Time Machine by H.G. Wells?
Could be. Maybe.
Like the Morgels? Is that what they were called in The Time Machine?
I can't remember.
Morgans?
I don't read. Remember?
No, it was a movie too.
Why not?
I think it's actually on our. I know it's on our list.
I've seen that movie.
It is actually on our list.
I believe I've seen the Omega Man. Let's hope I've seen this because I feel like I should have. But I have a feeling I'm going to like the Omega Man more. That's my guess.
Yeah, my guess is that too. Anything made for sci-fi, probably. Yeah. But anyway, so there you got it.
And all your networking abilities, but.
So, the Omega Man and Encrypt, we recommend anybody who would like to go watch those. Be ready for the next podcast, which will, with Niles being gone on a film set for the next 4 weeks,
sadly,
probably not going to happen until middle of November.
Sadly, yeah, we're gonna have to. It's gonna be a monthly thing, I think.
Yeah, we're looking at a monthly broadcast at this point. But in the meantime, we recommend or we would appreciate any feedback you guys have. You can feel free to email us feedback@dystopicradio.com. Go to the website dystopicradio.com. Links to Niles' other stuff, my other stuff, is all up on the website. Twitter, Facebook, you name it, you can probably find us there. Phone number is, I did not have that ready.
Yeah. But I mean,
I said the words.
Like, I've got my segment going called The Last Frequency. It's kind of wherever random stuff I find that I want to talk about or show pictures of or whatever I find in this dystopian apocalyptic network.
And
I post
have
up there.
the Lost Pages, which is going to be, I'll probably try to post up something about once a week about kind of dystopian books that are either coming out, that I'm reading, comics, different things like that. If there is something related to the movies that we have either already talked about or that we are going to talk about.
I try to cover that as well.
Yeah, you're trying to cover it kind of from the news perspective. I'm going to try to approach it from more the kind of comics and books perspective. And we will attempt to kind of keep some information coming out there as we're able to, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. I have it in front of me now. The phone number you can reach us at is 206-414-9309. Feel free to give us a call and leave us a voicemail. You can find us on iTunes, pretty much anywhere. Search for us on Google.
Dystopic Radio Network, or the Dystopic Boys,
or dystopicradio.com,
or any of that.
All right, without further ado, Niles.
If you're out there and you're still listening, keep surviving and get your blunderbuss and kill the first person you see because it's probably going to be yourself.
All right. For starters, it's a blunderbuss, not a blunderbust.
Did I say blunderbust?
Yes, you said blunderbust. It is a
damn it. I just screwed it up.
Come
on, man.
It is a blunderbuss. A blunderbust would be like a Italian artist who tries to make a sculpture of somebody. Yeah. Anyway,
it must be late.
And we
grab your blunderbuss.
There you go.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. There you
grab
go.
your blunderbuss. Shoot the first person you see come through the time travel portal because it's probably going to be yourself, and you want to close that loop.
And we will see you on the other side.
That's right. We will. Have a good night.